So one of the challenges that people have when they do discovery is being really concerned, and people talk about this all the time. I don't want to come off like I'm doing a survey, question, answer. And that is the art part of discovery, is making it into a conversation so that you can get the information that you want to. So I liked that visual. That feels like me all the time, trying to climb my way out and figure it out. So this is how you can reach me if you want to, and I love Twitter. A little bit about me. I've been 30 years in sales. I know that seems strange because I'm only 28, but I've been 30 years in sales and 20 years in MarTech and advertising. I started my career in advertising. I sold air, time, and space, radio, television, and magazine. Intangible things. It's a great training ground. I was laughing about the first year or two in sales having success. No, that was not my situation. I was handed 30 years ago the yellow pages, and that was my first entree into territory and time management. What makes me unique is my true, genuine curiosity. I am genuinely interested in people. It's just a natural thing. It's an innate thing. It's not something that I necessarily learned, but it's something I've honed over the years. And it's definitely helped me be very successful in my sales career. And I focus not on my quota, but I focus on exceeding my own expectations. And I'm all about living life to the fullest. And I practice that personally, and I practice it professionally. So this is what we're going to cover, and I thought you guys would like the check up there. We're going to talk a little bit about why genuine curiosity, like what does that matter in the discovery process? We're going to talk about what you need to know going into discovery before you actually sit down with a person. We're going to talk a little bit about the framework. I'm going to drill in deeply to discovery because I'm guessing like everybody in this room does discovery, right? Show of hands. Okay, so my hope, my outcome here is that I can help you guys get a little bit more deep into discovery and hone it as a real skill so that you're not on the surface of discovery, but you're really going in deep so that you walk away with a very clear understanding. And then we'll talk a little bit about the who, the when, the why with the customer, and then desirable outcomes. So this was really funny. I found it on the internet. I thought I'd play for you. It reminded me of your story, Duan, as well as mine, kind of in the beginning of our sales career.
Here I come. So, Maria, I think we've established your needs, and it's clear that my solution is the best. Do you have any other questions before I write down your order?
Well, Peter, it's,
Yes, Maria?
Well, Peter, the fact is, I'm not buying.
What? Maria, you can't do that to me. You need this very badly. I need your order very badly. I've put so much work into this project.
Sorry, Peter. Thanks, but no thanks. I don't think we really need this, It's all nice and everything. But no.
Oh my God. But Maria, you were so interested. You showed all those buying signals. Oh my God. I need help. Boss, help! Boss, help!
Yeah, it's this guy basically that goes into a sales meeting and he's all like, I understand your needs. Let's go ahead and do a contract. It's like, asking somebody to go to bed with them on the first date, right? And the guy's kind of funny and he's really loud and he's like, I don't understand why. And she's like, yeah, let me tell you all the reasons why this is not happening. So I really believe that the key to consistently high closing rates, the real key is around discovery. And it's the essence of really understanding and believing, what if you could create so much value in your customers' minds that they'd pay any price for your solution, right? How do we do that? By listening. Simply listening to what we need to understand from the prospect so that we can help truly solve their business problems and honestly make them look good. Because that's typically one of the number one reasons that people want to buy from you, is to make them look good. So why is discovery the key to improving your closing rate? Because most of the time, people in sales are guessing along the way what happens next and what they need to know. They don't actually dig in and ask the questions. And discovery is not a one-time thing. It's a thing that happens throughout the sales process. But the goal here is really learn about their business and what's important to them, really learn who those stakeholders are, really understand their process, and really understand the possible obstacles and all the pieces. And we're going to drill really deep into what that looks like. But the goal here is don't guess, just know. And so I like to break discovery down kind of into a couple of different pieces. The first is to qualify the prospect. To qualify them, you can create a list of companies and you can qualify a company based on what you learn about them on their internet, what industry they're in, if it's a sweet spot target industry, if they're a sweet spot size, right, the BANT kinds of things. But you can't truly qualify in or out a prospect until you have a level of discovery with them. So that's the first really important piece. The second is, if you don't do discovery, you can't position your solution. You can't really position to their needs. And the third is, you can't accurately and effectively and consistently close that deal without discovery, because you don't have any leverage in the conversation, because you don't really understand what's going on in the organization. You don't really understand what's important to them and where their true pain is. And so those are the pieces that we're going to really dig into. I'm going to first just kind of address what the hell you should not be doing. You should never walk in to a prospect without having done your research, because if you do, you're going to waste their time. And that is the first bad thing that happens with salespeople when they walk into a discovery meeting. So here are just some things that I do on a regular basis when I go in and target an account, and it is worth it to spend an hour of prep before you go into an important discovery meeting. And so the first is an annual report, and what typically you can find in the annual report, and this is very old school annual report, looking at them or looking at 10Ks, but what's cool about it is you can really understand what's going on in the company overall. You can understand what's important to the company. You can understand what their growth strategies are. You understand, are they trying to grow internationally, or are they growing through acquisition? Are they in cost-cutting mode or revenue generation mode, right? All of those things are really important so that you get a big picture of who this company is and what's important to them, so that you can meet their value areas. Another thing that I do is I search the web for company presentations by the CEO. I'm in marketing, so at Sprinkler we sell social media platforms, and so I look at things like, what is a CMO talking about? What does a CMO care about? What does a CEO care about? And what is that person talking about? And if there's a CRO or a VP sales, I want to understand what they're trying to do. And if I look at those things in company presentations, it gives me a really great spin on what's important. And it's one of the things that I didn't really start doing it until about 4 years ago. It's one of my tricks of the trade that really gives me great insight. Obviously, I hope we're all looking on LinkedIn and seeing how we're connected to people, but looking at things like what school they went to, what groups they're a part of, are really great kind of warm entrees in. And it's always great to say, hey, Joe, you and I have 87 connections. Why don't we know each other, right? Those kinds of things. It's just a really great warm entree in. And then also, I sell technology, so I look at built with, because I want to know what other technologies are in their stack. I want to know if my competitors are in their stack, so that I understand what their weaknesses are and their strengths, and I can kind of start positioning against them. Even, as I walk into discovery, I can start dropping and peppering in those things. So I have guiding principles in the way that I execute discovery. The first thing that I really like to do, one of the most important things to me, is I like to establish credibility. I typically do it in the first 20 seconds. And it's in introductions, and I talk about transparency when I introduce myself. I talk about my style and how important it is to be really transparent all along the sales process. I tell them I'm always going to be a straight shooter, and I hope that they'll return that favor. If things aren't going well, I want them to be transparent with me. If they have concerns, I want them to be transparent that this is all about finding a solution for them to help their business. I come from that same place that Dwan comes from, which is service first. And so I really focus from my heart on that piece, which is all about, let's be transparent, let's qualify our opportunity here together, in or out. And I like to do that in discovery. I like to walk out of the room going, I don't think I can help you, or I absolutely am so excited about working with you. And all those things just begin in establishing that credibility and being transparent, and people value that. The second thing is gain trust, and there's one way to do it, and pretty much only one way, is to listen. You just gotta listen. Never sell in discovery. Be genuinely curious. I learned from a guy named Barry Ryan many, many, many years in my career ago. I learned a lot about being genuinely curious all throughout the sales cycle, but specifically as you're asking the questions. In the beginning of sales, when we all started our career, we were drinking from a fire hose. We were learning sales process. We were learning about our company. We were learning, all the kind of like beginner stuff and making all the mistakes. We were totally engaged and truly curious about how to do this thing and how to master it. And then our time goes on, and we're at a company for a couple of years, and we're dreaming, we can just say this thing without, changing our presentation. We're just saying our spiel, and it gets a little boring, and we get a little dry, and we sometimes forget to ask those kinds of questions. And you kind of check out a little bit after you've been doing something for a while, after you've been with a company for a while, or after you've been, in an industry for a while, or even in sales for a while. And the one thing that I've held on really tightly to was being genuinely curious. So right now I just started a new company, I'm drinking from the fire hose, I'm learning all this new stuff, I'm really excited, and that will wear off. And so I'm curious about my company, I'm trying really hard to master this thing right now. I'm 1 week into this, right? So I'm trying to master it, and I know that my ramp's gonna be about 3 months. But the one thing that I never let go of is my genuine curiosity to help my customers. I really, really, in my heart, wanna help them and wanna understand, what is it that you're trying to solve? Tell me really what's going on. Really, what is the business? Where's the friction, right? I really drill in deep, and genuine curiosity is something you just can't fake, and people can see it if you fake it. So you kind of have to feel it from your heart. But if you're genuinely curious, you will build rapport, you will gain trust and credibility, because people, they feel comfortable that you really care about their business. And then the last thing is just be honest. And if you haven't gotten that from me in the last 5 minutes of this conversation, I'm really honest. And I have many a time walked away from a deal in discovery. I was, where I did the entire process, spent an hour with them, and I always spend an hour for discovery. If you can't give me an hour of your time to help you in your business, we're probably not gonna make that great connection. So that's my showstopper. I'm not going to meet with you and pitch you. I'm not going to meet with you for a half an hour. I want to spend some time together to truly understand, and that's part of my process. I don't know, David, if that's part of yours, but that's definitely part of my process. With all that, I have walked away from a deal. Typically, I'll do that qualify in or qualify out in that hour discovery, and I have walked away from many a deal saying, you know what, I don't really think we can help you. It's very powerful. I've had people say to me, why? I don't get it. I'm really interested in your solution. That's powerful. So there are a couple basic things here with discovery, and I just kind of like to break it down into 3 areas. The basics, kind of the deeper dive challenges stuff, and the metrics. There's a whole lot more to discovery, and I'm going to dive really deep into these in a minute, but I just kind of wanted to give you a high-level overview. So the basics are all around, organizational framework. Tell me, if I'm selling marketing solutions and I'm selling into Wells Fargo, and Wells Fargo has just had huge reputation challenges, right? They've got all sorts of pain points and issues. The first thing I want to understand in a company like Wells Fargo is, tell me a little bit about your organizational structure. Are you guys centralized or are you decentralized? Right? I want to understand who the stakeholders are that are going to sit at the table. So I want to understand that framework stuff that helps me kind of get a lay of the land for the organization, the company. Those are things that you can't typically get because it's about roles, it's about stakeholders, it's about politics. Those things you can't typically get unless you're sitting down doing discovery. It's not something you can get on discover.org. And then the challenges. The challenges are the deeper dive, the pain point stuff, right? So, tell me where it hurts. What are your biggest challenges? What are your initiatives? All those kinds of things. And then the metrics, of course, are quantifying the business impact. So, understanding, do they care about data? What kind of data do they report up to the C-level? And what kind of data do they need to do their job? So we're going to drill into these a little bit more deeply. I hope you guys really appreciate my Venn diagram tactics here. So the first thing we want to do is understand the organization. And I'm breaking it down really specifically in these areas. This I'm sharing with you guys my practice. So this is how I do it. These are the topics that I drill into. And when I do discovery, I write down every one of my questions and I personalize them based on the research that I did before I walked into the discovery call. And by the way, I never do discovery in person. I always do it on the phone because I don't want to waste my time meeting somebody in person if I'm going to be qualifying them out, right? So I do it on the phone. I build a really nice rapport, but I'm not taking a plane trip out into the field. And typically clients really like that. And then I kind of go back in and sit down with them. So understand the organization. So, all the things that I talked about with the who's who and the zoo stuff, right? Tell me about your organization. How are your, different departments working together and collaborating around, the topic that we're talking about? What are the political roles? What's working today? What's not working today in your organization? Those kind of high level types of things. And then I like to understand their goals and initiatives. And this is an area that I really drill deeply into. So I want to understand, I like to validate the corporate goals. And then I like to understand how the organization that I'm talking to, in my case, it's the marketing organization, how their goals tie into the corporate goals. Okay, so that I really get a feel, how connected is this company? Is everybody marching in the same direction? These are the kinds of things that you're asking the questions, but you're reading a lot of things around the questions to help you understand kind of the landscape. Is this a company who's got it together and they're going to do business with me and they are going to move it forward? Or is this a company that is really siloed, nobody's talking to each other, these guys are not ready to make a decision, right? So that's the piece around really understanding the dynamics, as well as how those goals and objectives are tied together in the organization. And then how are they growing the company? Are they growing through acquisition? Are they, are they really focused on driving revenue? As an example, in Wells Fargo, they are not even allowed to expand their revenue right now. So Wells Fargo right now is all about reputation management. And so they literally are divesting of businesses so that they don't grow their revenue in certain businesses, but they're growing their revenue in other businesses. I would know that unless I actually went to their annual report and took a look at last year's fiasco. The next piece, after we talk about initiatives and goals and what they're trying to aspire to, is what are the things that are getting in their way, right? What are the challenges that are preventing them from achieving their initiatives? And that's exactly, and I'm going to give you some samples of the way that I ask the questions, but that's exactly what I want to understand is what are the challenges? What's standing in their way, and where is the company pain versus the department pain? The company pain could be reputation management. The department pain could be something really different, right? And they're not necessarily always tied. It gives you kind of the big picture of what's going on. Then I want to understand what the business impact of that pain is. And I will ask questions around pain and challenges. I will ask typically 5 to 7 questions about pain and about challenges. And I'll ask them where it hurts. Help me to really understand where's the friction. And it gives me really good visibility. This is, in my opinion, the most important piece of information that you're going to get and capture to go sell that deal. If you don't have the real friction and the real business impact, you will not get that deal done. The next part is understanding functional needs, right? So, what are these guys really looking to accomplish? What are nice to haves? What are need to haves? I got to have this in this solution. And then, do you guys have the expertise internally to manage all that information, right? So I'm going to sell you the solution. Do you even have the expertise internally to handle this solution? Again, I'm reaching out going, are these guys going to need services and support, heavy duty, or just deployment support, right? So all of the questions that I'm creating have kind of the method to the madness in the background so that I really get a full picture of what this company's needs are. I want to understand what their stretch goals are because I don't want to just give them something that's going to help them now. I want to give them something that's going to help them 24, 36 months from now. And then, what are some of the problems that they expect are going to be solved? So the other piece that people don't feel very concerned about talking about is competition. I like to ask it straight out. Do you guys understand the landscape of kind of who the players are out there? And if they say great, I always like to understand what past experience have you had with our kind of solution. I want to understand what the opinions are of my competition that's sitting at the table, right? So what the players think, what each of the stakeholders think about those players. Does somebody have them in their back pocket, right? What's important to them? And then I also, I'm at this point, I'm still not selling and not talking about differentiators, but I want to understand what the customer, the prospect thinks are the differentiators. And if they've done this before and they failed, I want to understand why and what's different now. Sometimes they've just gone into RFP mode before and they never purchased. And that's always a question that I ask is, so what's different now? Right? Otherwise, we're going to end up to that same place. And then, of course, and a lot of folks here have talked about the metrics, I like to ask questions around what metrics do you report up to the C-suite and what metrics do you report up to your manager and what metrics do you need to do your job? I want to understand, is the organization really data-driven or could they care less, right? I want to understand what success looks like to them. How do they measure that? What does failure look like to them? How do they measure that? And of course, ROI, which is a really important metric. Some companies really care about ROI. It's crazy to me, but today lots of companies really don't care about ROI. I kind of want to know that too. And then the last piece, of course, is their buyer's journey. I want to understand what that process looks like. The eval process. If they formalized it, great. If not, let me help them to show them like what other companies have done. The software that I sell, it's pretty cutting edge. A lot of companies have done it, but many companies haven't done it. And so sometimes I can help them by setting the stage on the way to do it properly, right? So I want to understand, what is your eval process? Who are the players that sit at the table? What does the criteria look like for you? What are the most important pieces of that? What are the personal agendas? And what's your timing look like, right? And what does time to live look like for you? Like when do you guys want to be live on this thing and having it work? And what's really interesting about the discovery process for me is that, and I hope that you also do this, is I don't just do this with the key stakeholder, but I do it with everybody sitting at the table. And when you do that, it increases your closing ratio substantially. I have an 83% closing ratio. That's really high. It's because I've made a lot of mistakes and learned from them, honestly, all along the way. But I've honed this discovery process. I think it's, in my opinion, the most important piece of the sale. And if you goof this up, you end up having to go back over and over and over. So it's best to get it right. It's best to have your questions always in front of you. After 30 years, I still sit at my computer and have those questions right in front of me. And I personalize them. I personalize them in my notebook. And I take notes. And I don't type my notes on my computer. And the reason why I don't do that is, have you ever been on a call when somebody's typing? It's so annoying. So it's really nice to be in a situation where it's quiet in the background and you're just really having an intimate conversation. And it helps for the conversation piece of it so that you're not feeling, and the customer isn't feeling like we're having a survey questionnaire here, but we're actually having a real conversation. So these are just some sample questions that I don't know if you guys would find these interesting or not. I'm happy to pass them over to you, but this is just an example. Again, it's a very conversational style. So I typically open, my very first thing that I say to somebody, thank you so much for investing time with me. This is a little bit about me, and this is where I build my credibility. And transparency is very important to me, so I share my values. And then I say, I wanted to set the table just to begin by, kind of getting an understanding of how much you know about these kinds of solutions. And it gives you just a great amount of information about how educated they are, how important, how much research they've done, how important it is, right? And so, and then I ask them, how much do you know about my company? Just, again, level setting. If they're like, actually, I don't know at all. Your SDR called me. You guys kind of sounded interesting. I thought I'd pick up the phone, right? I give them the 2-minute overview, but I make it really relevant to their business and to their industry. And I really focus on, when I'm talking to them about my solution, I focus on the value to them and to companies like them. So that's how I do my elevator pitch. And that typically, it's a 2-minute, 3-minute thing. It sets the table. They get enough of an understanding that I've given them something, and now I'm about to spend the next 58 minutes learning from them. I never sell during discovery. Don't make that mistake. You blow your cover if you do that. So then I go on to ask questions like, would you be willing to give me just a little bit of a lay of the land around what you guys are looking to accomplish with this solution, right? These are softball questions. Really easy, warm, we're developing rapport. This is the art piece of it. The science piece is having those questions all in front of you and having your process down so that you make sure that you don't miss those pieces. Help me to understand how, the marketing and sales organization work together, because those are the stakeholders for my solution, right? So how do these organizations work together? Are they collaborative? How's the relationship between your organizations? Do you guys look at the same metrics, right? So you can see I have a topic, and then I'm drilling in a little bit to the topic. It's really conversational, right? They're giving me information, and we're really just having a nice conversation. Who are the key departments that are going to be impacted by deploying this kind of solution? Those types of things. And I ask typically a couple of times during the process about the key players that sit at the table, because the first time you ask it, they don't really give you all the information. The second time you ask it, they'll typically add in, well, actually, it's, this person over here too. And by the end of it, you know that you've got to go to purchasing, and that they want to actually end up, getting a checkpoint, a win in that negotiation. So now I know I got to go in high, right? Those kinds of things. So then I move into the goals and initiatives, right? And, help me to understand, I took a look at your annual report. I noticed that your company is going through global expansion over the next 24 months. So exciting. I saw that you guys are going to be moving to Asia Pac, et cetera. I'd love to understand how your department's initiatives are really focused around that global growth. It gives me alignment information, but it also helps me to understand how these guys are measured, how they're playing into where the company is going, and how I'm going to sell up to the C-suite. Because I now understand that this organization's initiatives are a really important piece, or maybe not so much, of those global initiatives, right? So the C-suite is typically the people who own the budget, the VP or C-suite. So we want to understand that, because that's what's going to be important to them. And then I say stuff like, I'd love to learn more about your other key initiatives. What other kinds of things are you working on? What other kinds of things do you guys want to accomplish this year? So you see, I'm really casual, but conversational, professional, but I'm delving in. What are some of the other measurable goals that you have charted for this year? So you see, I'm asking the same question 2, 3, 4 times, a little bit different each time, getting a lot more information as I go down the line. And you may be thinking to yourself right now, no damn prospect is going to sit through this. But if you're warm and you're curiously interested, they totally will. They want to engage with you. And in fact, and I think you said, Tuan, that if you can get them talking and you can get them kind of, engaged, and you're really listening to them, they like you. They want to buy from you. They're really like that you're, that they're able to talk to you and share this information. And they also feel like you really understand. So these are the kinds of questions, I always like to ask on almost every topic, what's working well today? What's not working well? What sucks? What's hard? Right? And then I move into, so now that I understand your initiatives, help me to understand what is preventing you from realizing them. What is keeping you away from your goals? And you can see, I asked this question again 4 or 5 times. I really want to understand, what is that friction point? And what is the business impact of that friction? And sometimes the friction isn't even anything that I can solve for. But I want to understand where that person is hurting, because it's going to give me great insight, again, into how to sell them. And I'm going to hold them accountable to that pain. And my last sales VP said to me, you not only stick in the knife, but you basically turn it several times. I want to make it hurt. I want to take that information and pepper it throughout my presentation, so that they just walk away going, man, we have got this serious problem here. And the only way to do that is just stick in the knife and really make it hurt, but you got to understand it if you're going to do it. So one of my last kind of push areas, I say things like, if you had to point to the business impact here when people don't give you the straight answer, if you had to point to it, like, what would that look like, right? Because very often people don't immediately understand what the business impact is. They just know they got a problem, but they don't necessarily tie it to the business. And then I typically like to segue over into the, measurable outcomes, right? So is the organization clear today on what measurable outcomes look like and how to do those measurements? And what does success look like? And, does your company even care about measurement? Again, most companies do today, but still some companies don't. So what metrics around cost, efficiency or business do you need to achieve? How do you guys measure ROI? What does impact of failure look like, right? You can see these are, and as they're answering them, I kind of drill in a little bit more. There's a path to it. And I really kind of try to exhaust as much as I can and then type back. And I'll pepper a couple of stories along the way of clients who've had really similar business impact or a lot of pain in this area. And I won't sell. I just talk about, I totally get it. A lot of, this company had the exact same situation. Over the last year, we've been able to work with them. I'm going to share that story with you when I come back. Right? So I give them a little hook. But I like to kind of pepper it through without selling them, just by kind of getting them excited so that they'll want to move to the next step with me. And then the famous who's who in the zoo. And this is one of my favorites. And I typically phrase it exactly like that because I'm kind of Austin weird in that way, even though I'm from the Bay Area. So I like to, start off with the help me to understand, right? Who are the key stakeholders? And then I drill in, so what are their roles? And what are they looking to accomplish? And what do they care about? What's going to make them look good? What's going to make them look bad? Sometimes people are able to give that just for a piece of the stakeholder organization. That's why you triangulate all of these questions with the other stakeholders that are sitting at the table, so you get all that information from the get-go. Tell me a little bit more about them, what they care about. What other companies do you think can solve this problem? It gives you great insight into who else they're looking at and what they care about. I really like to get into buying values. One of the things that kind of strikes me is how companies have sometimes one set of buying values and your business stakeholder, sometimes the economic stakeholder, have different buying values. It's kind of fascinating, really. And so you've got all these different people sitting at the table, and they don't always agree on what all the buying values are. Again, that is why discovery is so important to do across the table. So I really like to understand who's who in the zoo and what they care about. And then the buying process, of course, the last piece that I typically close off with, because I'm closing at every piece of the way along the process. And one of the last pieces is process. And so help me to understand your evaluation process. What does your buyer's journey look like? I like to really keep it about them and not about me, right? But all about their process. How does the team come together to make a decision? What does that look like? What's your time frame to do that? How long do you expect it to take? How many rounds do you go? Is this a formal process? Are you putting everybody through the same process? Do you guys do bake-offs, right? Those kinds of things. Often I'll offer to them if I have a customer that's kind of in a similar situation or that just went through a similar process, or they have some things in common that I've uncovered along this discovery discussion. I'll say to them, would it be helpful to just talk with another company who's just gone through this over the last 3 months? Maybe do some networking. I love connecting people, and not for the sake. You notice I didn't say it was my customer. I just said somebody else who's gone through a really similar process in your space, or or who's got some similarities with you. And people really appreciate being connected and having that conversation. So now I look like a helper, right? Somebody who's providing a service. I like to, of course, ask, where's the budget coming from, and how involved is that person in the process? I thought that was really interesting. I think David said having the economic buyer sitting at the table. I don't typically find that I'm able to do that for the demo piece of it. but that it's interesting. It's Sprinkler, they have MedPick, and I've never done MedPick, so that was actually a really helpful presentation to me. I'm like, and it's what I do in my sales process, but not exactly in that way. So that was actually awesome, really helpful. So, I'll ask those questions about the buying process. Do you need help in creating a business case? Would that be of value to you? I'm happy to help work through that with you. I love to ask the question, when do you want to be live? Like, when does this thing need to be up and running? When does it need to be in place, the solution? And let's work backwards from there. I'm working with a company right now, even only 1 week into my job, who will rename nameless right now, but the company is huge. And they said that they have another solution in place, but they're dumping it. It's not enterprise scalable. And so we just met with them and did a discovery conversation. And they wanted to walk in with a demo right away. We were like, yeah, no, that's we don't know anything about you, so we're not going to do that. That was on my first day at Sprinkler, by the way, that I met with this company. And what was really interesting about it was they said that they have something in place. They've just signed the contract. It's a 1-year contract. And what they're planning on doing is taking the next 12 months to evaluate. And they want to be live basically in 12 months. And I said, you want to be live in 12? I literally questioned them because I'm a challenger, if you know that methodology. I am a natural born challenger. I said, this is my first day at my company, by the way. I said, you want to be live in 12 months, the day that you cut off the contract? No. Don't do that. That is not going to serve you. And I literally redirected their time frame so that they actually make a decision in 6 months versus 12 months, just by helping them to understand you've got deployment, you've got testing, you've got to onboard your stakeholders, you've got to get adoption and get everybody really feeling comfortable with this before you cut off what you're doing today. And that is going to take you, 3 to 4, maybe 5 months tops, right? For that whole thing, everybody to really be comfortable. So don't do that. I don't want to see you fail. And that was a great credibility point and looked good in front of my new VP too. So that, how can I help you through your buyer's journey, right? How can I help you create the timeline? Just, starting with the question of when do you want this thing to be in place and hit the go mark and start feeling success. So here are just a couple of quick kind of takeaways. On the left, it's what to do with discovery. Take great notes. Take tons of notes. You should see my notebooks. I have 5-6 pages of notes from each discovery call. That's why Venn diagrams really help me. You would probably think my notes are crazy, but it's really helpful in just kind of having a framework of stuff. I take a lot of notes because I want to remember everything and I want to use it for my presentation. I want to use it in the sales process. I want to hold them accountable to all of that. So take notes and triangulate the information that you learned from this guy with that gal. Triangulate constantly to make sure that everybody is either on the same page or to learn that they're not on the same page at all, and to help them get on the same page, which is how you're going to get the deal done. I really like to deliver highly personalized presentations. The only way to do that is really deep, good discovery. My presentations are all about my clients. They're not at all about my company or features or functionalities. I'm completely solving their business problem. I spend a lot of time putting presentations together because I like that high closing ratio. Remind them of the value during objection handling. I remember when you told me this. And I just want to make sure, because I know that that's really important to you, and you said this, right? And it's all about the objection handling, holding your customer accountable throughout the process. And then just a couple of other things to think about. Discovery should be done definitely with all the stakeholders. I know I've said that several times. It's a really important piece. How many people straight up, honestly, do that today? Discovery with all the stakeholders. Right? Nobody. Start doing it. You will find that it will completely change your closing ratio when you're getting everybody on the same page. Discovery is not a one-time thing. It's definitely done throughout the sales process. I'd like to spend that first hour, that first like big hour time frame doing really deep discovery, but it's something that you do definitely all along the process. Create a conversation. It's not a question answer. You're having a conversation, and don't sell during discovery. That's probably the only thing you really have to walk away from this conversation today. Don't ever sell during discovery. And just be cognizant of like what I call double clicking into comments. So really try to capture the essence of what they're trying to say. Don't be afraid to drill in and ask more questions. That's your genuine curiosity coming out. Pay attention to that. They will. Lastly, the desirable outcome, right, is creating so much value in your customer's mind that they want to do business with you and buy your solution no matter what the price is. And creating value is all wrapped up in understanding and them transferring that value to you so that you can really help them in their business and take away their personal pain. And I always tell my clients during discovery, my number one goal is to make you look good. And I feel that from my heart when I talk to them. And it comes through in every conversation and every connection that I have with that client. They know I'm all about making them look good. And literally, I will cringe if something happens and it doesn't go that way. I'm definitely one there to fall on my sword with it. So that's my number one goal, and it comes across with that. And that is about being genuine and being honest and being genuinely, right, curious. Establish that credibility through storytelling, and know your facts. Just have 2 pocket stories that you go, I got this one, this is totally relevant. And know your facts, because people love metrics. They love to hear about the value that a company gets, a company just like theirs, right? And then lastly, be honest. I opened the conversation with kind of my end spoiler here, which is if you can't solve the problem, tell them so. Qualify them out. I've been selling for 30 years. The majority of my customers over the last 14 years that I've been in this specific MarTech space, the majority of my customers have bought from me multiple times. If they don't buy from me at this company, because I told them that I really didn't think I could help them, oh, they're going to buy from me. So play the long game. Don't play the short game. Yeah, it's great. You got to make your number. I get that. You got to make your number. But play the long game. The long game really benefits your career. And I'm 30 years in, and I can tell you, like, it's definitely really benefited mine. That's it.